All right, so once again, it's Corey Pollard with Elite Custom Golf Carts. We're gonna do wheel lights on a DMAX XT4. It's one of our newer models. If you haven't hit a like and subscribe, go ahead and do that now for future content. If you haven't got your light kit yet, hit the website for all of our carts, parts, and accessories. We're gonna go ahead and jump right in. So this is the new DMAX XT4, like I said. We've got some custom rims on there. And if you look right here, this is the light kit. It's gonna make you light up from behind your wheels. And this is kind of what you get in here. You get your brackets for your rear seat. You've just got this the wires kind of stuck in there, but you're all 4 light kits. This is your wiring harness where you can scan that for an app where you can control it. And then you also get a remote and some zip ties for your wiring. So tools wise, you're probably gonna want to take the wheels off to do this. So you need a jack. You're gonna need preferably a breaker bar to break your lug nuts loose before you hit them with the drill. And then a drill to take them off, obviously. A wrench or ratchet wrench like I have here with a 15mm socket on it. And that's gonna be to take off your front brake calipers. Like I said, we'll get into all this more later. You'll see me do it. You're gonna need a drill with about a 15-30 seconds bit on it to re-drill out your holes so that they match the size of your bolts going into your brake. Then you're gonna need this wiring harness, which we also offer. And this is gonna help you access power from your converter without having to splice any wires on your actual cart. You're also gonna need a flathead bit on a drill for your rear to squeeze down the clamps. Also, you're gonna need a wire crimper to crimp your wires coming from your power to your wheel kit. The way I like to start out is I always like to wire it first so that I can check the lights to make sure that they work properly before I install them on the cart, which I always suggest to anyone who's gonna do anything by themselves, always check any electrical part before you hook it up. This is just to cut your zip ties that we're gonna need to get to access the power down underneath the cart. And if you want to, you can meet me down up underneath. It is a little bit of a tight squeeze down here. So you've got a lot of wires bundled up down here. So first, it's best to cut this one zip tie right here to free a lot of this up so you can get it out of the way. If you look up here, this is your charger, this is your converter. You can tell because it has this plug in the front with the 10 spots, and then this is your wires coming in and out, and you see this fuse, and that's your 48 volts. That's why it's got that fuse on it. That's a good way to identify where your converter is. So what we need to get to is the plugs coming out of this converter. So we've got to open up this wiring harness a little bit. For what we need to do is identify which of these wires is which. And I always think that the best way to identify, especially on these carts, is just by color. So this is, like I said before, this wire with the fuse on it is the 48 volt wire, this red wire, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's not as thick as these other wires, but that's just how it is. This is the 48 volt going in. This blue and green wire is your 12 volt coming out. So this is the plug that you want to use if we're going to splice into the 12 volt, is this blue and green and black and blue. And all we're going to do is disconnect this wire and then take our wiring harness that we have. And there's really no way that you can do this the wrong way because these, like it's a male and female. So you're just gonna plug up your male, your female to their male coming from the cart, and then back into the other side of the clip. You're just splicing in, and then that's giving us 48 volts to these wires coming off. And this is what we're going to connect our kit to. The good thing about this kit is that it comes with its own clips. So all I've got to do is take the wires from the wheel kit, insert them in here, and clamp them down. It's pretty simple. So once you get your kit out of the box, you're going to see that you've got 2 that have this type bracket on it and 2 that kind of have these little side brackets on it. And these are going to be for your front wheels, and these are going to be for your rear wheels. And they are also labeled by marker on the inside rim. As you can see, this one says PF. That stands for passenger front. This one is gonna be labeled DF, driver front. We're gonna adjust these later to fit the cart. Like these are adjustable, yeah. To fit around the brake caliper. DR for driver rear. And this is labeled PR for passenger rear. That's just because it has certain functionalities where the lights roll the same direction, and if you put them on the wrong wheel, they'll spin the wrong direction. Then we're back to the wiring. This is gonna be your main hub that controls your lights. We're gonna mount that later in the cart so that you're able to scan that. I just reach down into the cart, down here where your wires are. You're gonna pull it straight up through the cart so that you have them up here. Because we're gonna mount that little URL code right here so that you can be able to scan it with your phone. So I'm gonna bring the wires up here towards where I'm gonna mount it. So obviously these aren't the connections that we need for this kit to work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this off. We're gonna strip the wire back a little bit so that we can splice into it. So we're gonna cut off the tip, maybe take about a 1/2 inch and then splice it so you can expose the wire. I usually cut it right at the base of where you see like the metal ends. And then I usually strip it right here back where the sleeve ends. So you got your wire crimpers. We're gonna grab our wires from underneath again, pull them up. You can maybe put this on top of it to hold it from falling back down. We're gonna take the ends of these wires. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try to twist these tight and to a point to make it easier for us to put them in and connect them and splice them. And it gives you a more solid base to crimp to. We're gonna take this, we're gonna try to make it look like that. I don't know if I have to take the time to say this, but I'm gonna do it. We're gonna go red to red and black to black. So then you're gonna take, there's a little opening inside of here. Can you see that? Do I need to get into the light? Little opening in there, and you're basically just gonna stuff this wire in there as well as you can, as deep as you can. And then you're gonna take the corresponding, since this is a red wire clip, you're gonna take the corresponding hole on your wire crimper, the red one. So usually at the end, you're gonna put it in there and crimp it down. And now you're in there, solid. You're gonna do the same thing with your black wire. We're gonna shove it in there as good as we can, as deep as you can. Do your best to hold it. Red hole on the wire crimper. Crimp it down. Should be solid. Sometimes I like to just put a second crimp on the end just to make sure it's really holding. Next thing, I like to take all of this and I'm gonna disconnect each light and I'm gonna put it where it goes. That way there's no confusion about which light's which at any given time. So before we move on to the next step, let's go ahead and make sure these lights work. Now that we got them all wired up, I like to just lay them out so you can see each one separately. Then we're just gonna cut the cart on. Boom. Looks like we in business. Now that we know that they all work, we're gonna start preparing them to mount one by one and then mounting them to the cart. So I'm just gonna take this one, which is the passenger front, and I'm gonna disconnect it from the whip. A lot of times, and this is probably gonna be the case with your kit, these holes aren't actually drilled wide enough for your nut from your brake to go through. I mean, your bolt from your brake to go through it. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to get a wider drill bit and go through that hole so that we can mount it properly. And that's why I said you needed a drill bit with a 15, 30-second bit on it. It's gonna make it nice and wide enough for that bolt to go through there. For safety purposes, I would always suggest that anybody who's gonna use power tools, use some way to stabilize it. I've got a little vise right here that I'm gonna use just to prevent injury. And always probably gonna wanna use eye protection of some sort as well. We're gonna make it a little wider. I got this bit, I'm gonna go through the same hole. Boom. Now we got both those holes bigger. We're gonna take it over here. This is the passenger front. I'm just gonna kind of put it next to the passenger front wheel. And then we'll prep this driver front before we pop these wheels off. All right, now that we got both those done, bring this over here, put it next to your driver front wheel. Then we're gonna go to popping off the old wheels. So I always suggest with any golf cart that you use a breaker bar to break your lug nuts loose instead of just putting a drill on it. So we're just gonna break them all loose real quick. I think this just helps to prevent stripping of any sort, and anyone who's ever worked on a car or golf cart, a lawnmower knows that stripping a lug nut is not a good time. So to be able to get in the middle of this cart when you're jacking it up, I think it's best to use this plate that's welded to the frame. It is just one flat plate, but you don't want to get up here because you'll be on your motor mount. For me, I think that's the safest place as long as you get in the center. So we're gonna grab it right there, jack her up. Just enough to get her off the ground. Then we're gonna use drill with our lug nut socket on it. Let's take these off. I obviously don't have a future on the NASCAR crew.
I was just thinking that.
All right, now once we've accessed the back of this brake, the back of the wheel, basically what you want to look for is your brake mounting bolts. Now if you look at this brake, it's got two big bolts, one on the top and one up underneath the bottom right here. Those are the bolts that you're going to need to take off to get this on, and then you're just going to remove the brake and then try to hang it somewhere where you don't put any tension on this brake line. So that's where the big ratchet with the 15 comes in. So we're gonna get this 15 with this heavy duty. I'm gonna get it on here, break that loose. You might need a little bit of force. I usually like to loosen it up to a good extent and not take it all the way out until I get the other one loose. So I make sure that I don't just like drop this brake caliper. All right, I'm gonna take these things off finger tight while you're supporting the brake caliper. Just kind of pull it off. Maybe try to hang it. Ooh, usually you can kind of put it like right here. Try to stuff it in right there or something. While you're doing your work here, just want to make sure you don't put too much stress on that brake line, possibly rupture it. All right, now when you get your kit, you're going to kind of notice that these are loose on here. And we're going to have to kind of work those around and see where we need them to be for our wire to be kind of towards the top, number one, and our mounting brackets to be lined up with these bolts. So you just kind of hold it up to it, like behind it here, and you kind of work these around and kind of look at where you're coming out and kind of figure it out. And then you probably want to at least halfway tighten these down so that they're not all flopping around on you. And for that, you're gonna need a Phillips head bit and an 8mm wrench. So like I said, once you've got like a general idea of how you want this to be on there, then you want to take a little wrench, an 8mm, fit this little nut, and just tighten this up. Now during this process, you want to be kind of careful not to over tighten it, because if you pinch this LED line a little too hard, you're going to damage the LEDs. So you just want it to be just enough so that it's not like sliding super easily. You can always go back and tighten it a little bit more later if you think it's too loose. Just kind of want to tighten it a little bit and then test it. Like, I think that's actually pretty good. I can still move it, but it's not easy. Same thing with this other one. Now that you've kind of got this where you almost think it's right, but you can still adjust it a little bit, you're going to bring all this together. We're going to put this back around this brake to make it a little more stable. We're going to string this around the back side of the brake and kind of hold it all together like this. And then you're gonna grab one of these screws. I know I'm making this look a lot easier than it probably is. But you wanna line all that up with the brake, where the brake hole is, and kind of get one of them started. Once you got one of them started, then you can kind of like think exactly about, you know, where you want it to be. Is that good with where your wire's coming out? Because your wire's gonna want to go back this direction. We're gonna go in there. We're gonna leave a little bit of slack in it so that when you turn the wheel, it doesn't put too much stress on the wire. And then once you kind of got it lined up where you feel like it looks like it's even with the brake hub, where it looks like it's spinning true, you're gonna try to get this other bolt in. And you may have to adjust the brake position and the bracket or whatever the case may be to kind of make it look like you want. So this thing's pretty pliable. So you could kind of, like if it's a little oblong or, you know, you feel like it's a little ovular, you can kind of squeeze it into shape. Once you've got it where you think it like looks like it's gonna light the wheel up, it's not like interfering with the brake or anything, go ahead and tighten it up. Kind of adjust a little bit, see if you're happy with it. Feels solid. I'm happy with it. I'm gonna kind of hang this back this direction so we can run that to our wire later. For the sake of the video, we're gonna leave the wheel off until I run the wire just so it's easier to see for all of you guys at home. Now we're just gonna move over here to our other side real quick. All right, so basically what we're gonna do over here, it's basically the same thing. You can go ahead and kind of work your back bracket around. Yeah, that's probably good. It's on there, but it's a little difficult to move. It's not crushing the LED. Sometimes with this longer one, you have to kind of bend it a little bit. Like this is aluminum, but it's just the bottom side of that brake's a little bit like fatter. That's just something that I do. It doesn't necessarily have to be done. I think it kind of makes for a little bit of a better fit. I mean, you ain't got to do a lot. Something, it's a little hint. It's gonna be sick. Get that top bolt in. You're kind of happy with it. You feel like it's not touching your brake. Kind of solid. We're gonna send it. So now that we got our front two mounted, there's really no modifications needed for the rear. So we're just gonna go ahead and disconnect these. Now if you want to, this is a good time probably, just go ahead and mount your little controller. Now, I mount this because I know that my customer probably wants to scan it. But this is completely up to you. If you scan it once with your phone, it allows you to download an app that controls this. So if you don't want to go through the grief of mounting it for your own access, just scan it once with your phone and then you can wrap it up or mount it anywhere you like. But for the customer's sake, I mount it like right here. So usually this is your power wire coming up from before that we pulled up from the bottom. And this is the driver's side of your cart. You've got this big speaker box here and you've got this bar. I usually think that, you know, one screw into the bar and a small self tapper into that speaker wire maybe, or you could always just put like a sticky pad on the back of here, double-sided tape. I mean, there's a lot of places. You could just bundle this all up with your wires underneath the cart if you didn't need to scan it. But like I said, for my purposes, this is how I'm gonna do it. I always usually put a little piece of sticky on the back just to keep it from like rattling or squeaking. I'm gonna kind of lay this on the back of here. I wanna cover up my hole, so I'm gonna snip this extra. I like this double-sided tape. Not only does it kind of cut down on your friction, your rattling, but also just helps you mount it. Just makes it a little simpler. Because I got this to kind of hold it up here while I'm getting my screws ready or whatever. My plan is I'm gonna ride this down with this wire, kind of makes that look clean, and then I'm gonna send these down all behind here where you're not really gonna see a lot of wire after I mount everything. Is this just not? Gonna send a little self-tapper in there. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to mount it like this. This is just how I do it. All right, so now that we've got this mounted and secured to the top with the sticky on the back, we're gonna go ahead and start running these wires. So all my power wire goes right down there to the bottom. So I'm just gonna kind of let that go down the way that it's going. Eventually I'm gonna have it so that it rides this little contour like that, kind of hides it. And then I'm gonna bundle all those wires back up underneath there where all the other power wires were that we disconnected earlier. So now we have this, and you kind of want to feed this down underneath the cart to where we can kind of bundle it out of the way. With all these bundles, it can be kind of a lot. So we're just gonna send this down this way. And once I get it down there, I can get a little more technical with how I doll it up and make it look a little better. I'm gonna kind of send it behind this little speaker. And I usually try to send a zip tie around right here, just to support the weight of the wire so it doesn't pull down. We're gonna put a zip tie around this just to support the weight of the wires coming out of the box. There's not a lot of stress on them. I'm gonna push it down in here, and you can go around this little post and then zip it. All right, now that we've got that kind of mounted and run down, we're gonna go back up underneath the cart for a little happy fun time.
Yay.
Welcome to my world, guys. The underworld. All jokes aside, we got these wires coming down right here. The way I like to split it is I like to do one bundle running to the front of the cart, which is like these two. And then I'll run this bundle just for these back two.
Does it matter which bundle is which?
It doesn't. It doesn't matter how you actually plug them up. As long as they're all mounted in the right position, they'll all work correctly. But this is just how I like to do it. Like one bundle to the front of the cart, one bundle to the back. So I'm gonna take these, since we've already got our fronts mounted and we got our jack taken up by, you know, the front being opened. I'm gonna unbundle these wires right here. And the way I like to run them is kind of follow where they run wires on the rest of the cart. You see how right here, these are going up from the back and running up through here. I'm just gonna try to mock their style by running it the same way. You just wanna make sure that as you're running this wire, before you plug it up, that you're following the same path that you want it to be when you're all said and done. All right, so now that I've pulled this wire out of here, all you're gonna do is connect it right here, push these together, twist it on. And you don't wanna twist this too hard, like sometimes you can tighten it too much. You wanna kinda put this thing, I wanna throw a zip tie around here that gives me a little bit of slack. And sometimes I'll throw it around this A-arm right here on the other side of this clip, so that when you turn the tire, you've got room for this to stretch. Just want to go a little bit on the other side of the clip itself. Not only going to kind of take the stress off of the clip itself, it's just going to kind of hold it in position so it doesn't get caught up in your wheel or any of this stuff too. Now that we got that one connected, we'll just kind of get this other one going as well. And I'm going to follow the path of the front driver wire, and then I'm going to cut across the front. All right, then kind of up through here, up through here. We're going to hook it up. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to throw a little zip tie around it right here. If you really want to feel super comfortable with it, you can have someone turn the wheel while you're down here. I've kind of done this a couple times. I kind of know about what I need to do. All right, once we've got these wires all run the kind of the way that we want, we've got enough slack, adjust this a little bit. We're gonna start running them back and just zip tying them to the rail, as I've done these right here. You just wanna kind of keep these together. Pull this one from over here, pull this one from right here. Just zip tie them to this rail, run them to the back. We're just gonna take some of this access wire and we'll bundle it up to this or to that, depending on, you know, how we got it, how we're feeling. But for now, we can go ahead and finish mounting the front and get the wheels back on. All right, so if you're feeling good about how this is mounted, you think it's solid, you like the shape of it, not touching the brake, we're gonna go ahead and throw this wheel back on. We're on the home stretch now. We're gonna move back here, get our jack in position, break all these lugs loose. Same thing over here. So for the jack placement in the back, what I usually like to do is the intersection of this frame right here, behind the wheelbase. If you use the rear shaft, you have to go to one side or the other. So I like this because I can get in the dead center. So you're gonna take this little clip and you've got to open it all the way up. It's gonna give you a little bit of resistance. You need like a flat head on a drill. You've gotta open it all the way up like this. So what I like to do is, once you've got it open like this, so I'm gonna wrap this around this shaft right here, and then we're gonna connect this back together, and you gotta kind of hold it in there while you hit it with the drill. All right, so this is pretty easy, but also like, you know, it's got its little twerks. So you'd like to be able to put this thing on here like this, but you can't because you got that big old bulky brake in your way. So we've got to kind of juxtapose this to where it kind of goes on at an angle so that we can get a nice circular form out of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get this bracket inside of our clip like that. And then kind of at this angle where we're avoiding the brake and everything, we're going to try to tighten it up. And then once we've kind of got it tightened and mounted, then we can kind of go to flexing and moving it and trying to make it look perfect. All right, so I've already kind of got it in there. And this, even at this time, you can kind of start thinking about what you're going to need to do, how you're going to need to flex it to make it kind of look right. So I'm just going to go tighten her up. You kind of see it's not like in the greatest shape right off the jump, so you've got to kind of flex it a little bit to give it exactly the shape that you're looking for. And all this is kind of aluminum, so even though it's solid, it's kind of pliable. What I do is I take this wire, the rear wheel doesn't turn, so all you need to do is just kind of run this thing straight up here so that it just gets straight up out of your way. You want to leave enough slack in it so that when it's pointing up like that, it's not going to like hit your tire. All right, now we're going to throw this thing back on. All right, so I got this other clip on here. I was able to just string it together with my hand, but basically the same process. You're just going to wrap it back around there and then string it back through, leaving yourself enough space. Let me hit you with the light here. Make sure that my bracket's tied in behind it. Kind of want to be off of that brake right there. And then go to tightening. If it ain't tight, it ain't right. So you're going to take one of your bundles that you got left. You're going to bring it to your driver's side rear. Just going to bundle that up and then tighten it down. Boom. And then we can even like we can even bundle that extra wire up right there. We're going to do the same thing with your other light. Now I'm going to actually run this one up underneath everything, but just to hook it up, I'm going to undo this little zip tie just a little bit. I'm going to make sure that I go up underneath all of this. And I'm going to shoot through this little gap right here. Here's this clip. You're going to make sure that you line up a little space in there. And now we're going to cut the cart back on, make sure it all still works. Make sure they're all twerking and working. And I'm working in there. And I'm working in there. I just got to throw this wheel back on here. We're going to zip tie up a couple more wires and then we're basically done. Now that we got the wheels back on, we're going to drop the cart. All right, so it's always a good idea to tighten all your lugs down with a torque wrench. About 65 pounds. So there we go. That's adding wheel lights to a DMAX XT4. Pretty much a lot like the D5. Pretty simple process. Got them all working. All that's really left to do is just kind of tighten up all the wires and you just zip them to the frame however you would like. It's kind of up to you. All right, well, that's it. Thanks for stopping by. If you guys need any other parts or accessories, hit us up on the website, elitecustomgolfcarts.com. Thanks.